My boyfriend asked for a temporary break and expected me to stay available. 6 months later, he arrived at my new city with a ring. He was shocked to learn that a break can become a goodbye. Sam did not break up with me. At least that was how he described it. He called it a pause. He said he needed to spend the summer alone, think about his career, and understand what he wanted from life. He said we were not ending things. We were creating space. I asked whether I was allowed to date other people. He said he did not want to discuss that. I asked whether he expected me to wait. He said he hoped I would respect what we had built. That was not an answer, but it was an instruction. For 3 years, Sam had been the person who made every major decision slowly. He did not choose restaurants without reading reviews. He did not accept jobs without comparing benefits. He did not book vacations until he had checked the weather forecast 10 times. But when it came to our relationship, he wanted me to remain emotionally committed while he considered every other possibility. I told him I would not live in a relationship that only existed when he needed comfort. He said that was dramatic. I moved out 2 weeks later. The first month was miserable. I kept expecting a message. I checked my phone whenever it lit up. I wondered whether I had misunderstood his request for space. Then I started a new job in another city. It was not a perfect job, but it was mine, and the city was full of people who knew me only as myself, not as Sam's girlfriend, not as the person who remembered his appointments, not as the person who waited while he decided. I joined a weekend hiking group. I bought a bicycle. I learned which bakery sold bread before sunrise. Life became ordinary, and ordinary became peaceful. Sam sent occasional messages. Hope you're doing well. Thought of you today. Do you still have the blue sweater? I responded only when necessary. Eventually, the messages stopped. 6 months after the pause began, I received a call from my old friend Nina. She said Sam was in town. I asked why. She said he had told everyone he was there to surprise me. I told her I did not want to be surprised. The next morning, Sam appeared outside my office, holding flowers and a small box. He looked exactly like the person I remembered. That was the problem. He said he had spent the last 6 months realizing I was the only person who understood him. He said he had made a mistake by asking for space. He said he wanted to start over. I asked whether he had dated anyone during the break. He said that was not important. I said, it is important if you want to restart a relationship under the same rules. He admitted he had gone on several dates. He said none of them worked out. I asked whether he had come back because he wanted me, or because he had not found someone else. He said that was an unfair question. I told him it was the only honest question. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not an engagement ring, but a simple band with a small stone. He said he wanted to prove he was serious. I asked whether he had a plan for what would be different. He said he would communicate more. I asked how. He said he would try. I asked whether he understood why the pause had hurt me. He said he had been confused, and I should not punish him for needing time. I told him I was not punishing him. I was accepting the consequences of his choice. You wanted a relationship without the responsibility of choosing it, I said. I wanted a partner who chose me, even when life was uncertain. He started crying. He said I was throwing away 3 years because of one difficult summer. I said, you threw away 3 years when you asked me to sit in an empty chair while you decided whether someone else might sit there. He asked whether there was someone else now. There was. His name was Theo. We had been dating for 3 months, slowly and carefully. He knew about Sam. He had never asked me to prove that I loved him by waiting. I did not tell Sam about Theo immediately. I did not want my decision to sound like a comparison. I said, even if I were completely alone, I would still say no. Sam put the ring back in the box. Before he left, he asked whether I hated him. I said no. He asked whether I still loved him. I said, I love the memories. I don't want the arrangement. He went back to his city that afternoon. A week later, I received a message saying he had finally understood that he had not asked for a pause. He had asked me to remain loyal without giving me a relationship. I did not reply, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because understanding was something he needed to do without expecting me to reward him for it. The empty chair was gone. I had moved it out of my life, and the space it left was not lonely anymore. My fiancé canceled our engagement photos because he said he didn't know whether he wanted the wedding. The photographer gave me a choice: cancel the session or show up alone. I showed up alone. The engagement photo session was scheduled for a Sunday morning in a field outside the city. The photographer, Elise, had a reputation for making nervous people look comfortable. I needed that because my fiancé, Grant, hated being photographed. He had complained about every picture we had ever taken together. His smile looked forced. His hair looked wrong. The lighting made him look tired. If I posted a picture, he asked me to delete it. Still, he had agreed to the session because he said engagement photos were part of the process. 3 days before the appointment, he told me he could not go. I asked whether he was sick. He said, I don't know if I want to get married. I waited for him to continue. He did not. I asked whether he wanted to end the engagement. He said he needed time. I asked whether he expected me to remain engaged while he decided. He said, I'm not asking you to wait. I'm just asking you not to make this bigger than it is. I canceled the wedding planning meeting scheduled for that afternoon. Then I emailed Elise and explained that the session might need to be canceled too. Elise replied, you can cancel or you can come alone. The location and time are yours either way. I almost laughed. The idea sounded ridiculous. Engagement photos without a fiancé were like buying a cake for a party no one was attending. Then I thought about how often I had postponed myself to protect Grant's uncertainty. I told Elise I would come. On Sunday morning, I arrived in a simple cream dress. I expected to feel embarrassed. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Elise did not ask me to explain. She gave me instructions. Walk toward the trees. Turn your face toward the light. Hold the flowers. Breathe. For the first 20 minutes, I looked at the camera like it had caught me doing something wrong. Then Elise asked, what would you look like if you were not waiting for someone else to approve of the moment? I started crying. Not because Grant was absent, but because I realized he had been absent from so many moments while standing beside me. We took photos by the river. We took photos on an old wooden bridge. We took one where I was laughing so hard that I had to sit down in the grass. When I got home, Grant was waiting in the driveway. He had seen the preview that Elise posted with my permission. He said I had humiliated him. I reminded him that he had canceled the session. He said I should have stayed home. I asked why he was angry that I had kept an appointment he had refused to attend. He said the photos made it look like I had already moved on. I said, "You asked for time. I used mine." He walked away, then returned 10 minutes later and said he was ready to talk about the wedding. I asked whether he wanted to marry me. He said he didn't know, but he didn't want anyone else to see me looking happy without him. That answer ended the engagement. The photos were published in a small online gallery with the title, A New Beginning. I had not chosen the title. Elise had. People assumed the pictures were for a self-portrait project. I did not correct them. Grant told his family that I had been reckless and disrespectful. His mother said I had turned a private relationship problem into a public performance. I said, "The private problem was that your son wanted me available while he decided whether I was worth marrying. The public part is only that I stopped hiding it." I sold my wedding dress before it arrived. I returned the decorations. I moved into a new apartment with large windows and no room that felt like a waiting room. A year later, Elise mailed me a small printed album from the photo session. On the first page, she wrote, "You were never the person being photographed for someone else. You were the person who finally looked at herself." I kept the album. I never married Grant. But I did learn that a canceled future is not the same thing as an empty one. My ex came back after I rebuilt my life and said I had finally become the woman he always wanted. I asked him one question. Why didn't you want me when I was becoming her? When Noah left me, he said I had become too independent. He said I had changed after taking a new job, joining a running club, and making friends outside our relationship. He said he missed the version of me who was always available. I asked whether he wanted me to quit my job. He said no. I asked whether he wanted me to stop seeing my friends. He said no. I asked what he actually wanted. He said, "I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm important anymore." Then he ended the relationship. For the first month, I tried to understand it. I replayed every conversation and wondered whether I had become careless. I apologized for things that were not mine to apologize for. I offered to talk, but Noah said he needed space, so I gave him space. I started running before work. I joined a small book club. I learned how to cook meals that did not come from a delivery app. I changed my apartment because every room in our old place felt like a question I had never answered. 6 months after the breakup, I received an email from Noah. He said he had been thinking about us. He said he had made a mistake. He said he wanted to meet for coffee. I agreed because I was curious, not hopeful. He arrived wearing the jacket I had bought him for his birthday. He looked nervous and smiled when he saw me. He said I looked happy. I said I was. He told me the last 6 months had been difficult. He had tried dating, but no one understood him the way I did. He said he missed our routines and the way I knew what he needed before he said it. I asked whether he missed me or the convenience of being understood without having to communicate. He said that was unfair. Then he said the sentence that answered everything. "You've finally become the woman I always knew you could be." I looked at him and asked, "Why didn't you want me while I was becoming her?" He said he had wanted me the whole time, but he had been afraid of losing his place in my life. I told him that was not love. That was insecurity, asking me to become smaller so he could feel tall. Noah said he had changed. He had started therapy. He had learned that relationships required trust and independence. I asked what he wanted from me now. He said he wanted to try again. I did not say no immediately. Instead, I asked him to explain what would be different if we dated again. He talked for 10 minutes without naming one specific behavior. He said he would appreciate me more. He would be less jealous. He would not take me for granted. I asked how he planned to do those things. He said, "I'll just know better this time." That was when I understood. He did not want a new relationship. He wanted access to the old one with a more confident version of me inside it. I told him I was not interested in starting over. He looked shocked. "But you said you were happy to see me." "I am happy to see you," I said. "That doesn't mean I want to be with you." He asked whether there was someone else. I said there was someone I was getting to know, but that was not why I was saying no. I was saying no because I had already learned how to live without negotiating for permission to grow. A few weeks later, Noah sent a message saying he hoped I would not regret my decision. I replied, "The only decision I regret is waiting for someone to approve of the life I was building." The person I was dating and I eventually became serious. I told him the full story because I wanted him to understand why I sometimes apologized for taking up space. He said, "You don't have to apologize for becoming more yourself." I wrote that sentence on a note and put it on my refrigerator. Noah had wanted the version of me who waited for him to decide whether I was worth choosing. He did not understand that by the time he came back, I had already chosen myself. After my ex broke up with me, his family called every day to explain why I should forgive him. I agreed to one meeting. I brought a calendar. When Aaron ended our relationship, his mother called me before he did. She said he was devastated. She said he had made a terrible mistake. She said I needed to understand that he was under pressure at work and had not been himself for months. I listened politely. Then Aaron called and said he wanted to take a break. I asked whether a break meant we were still exclusive. He said, "I don't know." I asked whether he wanted to continue the relationship. He said, "I don't know." I told him I could not remain in a relationship where the other person refused to define whether it existed. I moved out of our apartment that weekend. The calls from his family increased. His sister said I was abandoning him. His mother said I was being unforgiving. His uncle sent me a long message about how everyone deserves a second chance. No one asked what Aaron had done. They only asked whether I would forgive him. The truth was not dramatic at first. Aaron had stopped coming home consistently. He said he was helping a friend with a business project, but he would not explain what the project was. He had begun locking his phone. He accused me of being suspicious whenever I asked a normal question. 3 months before the breakup, I found a receipt for a hotel 2 towns away. He said it was a work conference. I later discovered there had been no conference that week. When I asked him about it, he said I was obsessed with finding reasons not to trust him. Then he ended the relationship and told his family that I had become impossible to reassure. I did not correct the story. I did not want to argue with a family that had already chosen a version of events. Finally, Aaron's mother invited me to dinner. She said it would help everyone get closure. I almost declined. Then I realized I had been carrying the entire truth alone while they discussed my character without me. So I agreed. I arrived with a folder containing 4 things: our shared calendar, the rent ledger, the hotel receipt, and a copy of the message Aaron had sent me 2 days before the breakup saying he was working late. His mother looked alarmed when she saw the folder. Aaron said, "This is unnecessary." I said, "You invited me to explain why I should forgive you. I'm going to explain why I left." I opened the calendar first. It showed every night Aaron had said he was working late. Then I showed the rent ledger, which proved he had been using our joint account to pay for hotel rooms. Finally, I showed the receipt and the message from the same night. His sister said the receipt could have been for anyone. I agreed. Then I placed the final document on the table, an email from the hotel loyalty program confirming that the reservation had been made under Aaron's name and that a second guest had checked in with him. No one spoke. Aaron stood up and said he was leaving. His mother asked him to sit down. For the first time, the family meeting was not about persuading me to take him back. It was about asking him questions he could not redirect toward me. Who was the guest? Why had he used our account? Why had he told everyone I was unstable? Aaron said he had not physically cheated. He said they had only talked. His mother asked why he had paid for a hotel room to talk. He had no answer. I closed the folder. His uncle said, "You should have come to us sooner." I said, "I shouldn't have needed a family hearing to be believed." Then I left. Aaron contacted me the next morning. He apologized for allowing his family to pressure me. He said he had never meant for anyone to think badly of me. I replied, "You told them a story where you were the injured person. You don't get to apologize for the misunderstanding when you wrote the story." A week later, his mother sent me a message saying she was sorry. She said she had been so focused on protecting her son that she had forgotten I was a person who had been hurt. I appreciated the apology, but I did not return to the relationship. Months later, I heard Aaron had moved into a new apartment with a person from the hotel. His family had stopped defending him because they finally understood the difference between supporting someone and helping them avoid consequences. I still have the calendar, not because I enjoy looking backward, but because it reminds me that confusion often disappears when you write down what actually happened. My fiancé ended our engagement and demanded the ring back immediately. He assumed I would be too heartbroken to check the receipt. That was his first mistake. The engagement ring was beautiful, but it had never felt entirely like mine. Caleb chose it without me. He said he wanted the proposal to be a surprise, and I believed him. The ring had a thin gold band and a pale green stone that caught the light whenever I moved my hand. He proposed on a hiking trail in front of a waterfall. He cried. I cried. A stranger took our picture, and Caleb posted it before we even reached the car. For the next year, every conversation about the wedding ended with him saying, "We have time." Then his behavior changed. He became critical of everything I did. He said I was too independent, too busy, too difficult to impress. He began spending money on expensive dinners with friends while telling me we needed to cut the wedding budget. One night he came home and said, "I don't think I can marry someone who makes me feel inadequate." I asked whether he wanted to end the engagement. He said yes. Then he looked at my hand and said, "I need the ring back tonight." I removed it and placed it on the table. He reached for it, but I put my hand over the box. "I'll return it properly," I said. He laughed. "It's not complicated, it's mine." Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I did not know, and neither did he. The next morning I searched through the files in our desk. I found the jeweler's invoice, the insurance policy, and the credit card statement. The ring had been purchased on a joint account. The receipt listed Caleb as the purchaser, but the insurance policy listed both of us as covered owners because he had added it after the proposal. I called the jeweler and asked what the return policy was. The ring was not eligible for a cash refund because it had been customized, but it could be exchanged for store credit under certain conditions. I called the insurer and asked how the policy worked after an ended engagement. They told me to document the transfer and obtain a signed receipt from the person receiving the ring. I asked Caleb to meet me at the jeweler. He arrived angry. He said I was making a simple breakup ugly. He said I was trying to keep the ring because I wanted money. I told him I was not keeping it. I was returning it with documentation. The jeweler inspected the stone. Then the manager pulled up the purchase record. There had been another ring on the same order, a matching band, paid for with the same account, to be delivered later. Caleb had never mentioned it. The manager asked whether I knew about the second item. I said no. Caleb interrupted and said it was a mistake. The manager looked at the order and said the second ring had been engraved with the initials CR. My initials were not CR. Caleb's ex-girlfriend's initials were. The store went silent. I looked at him. He said the ring was for a family member. Then he said it was a gift he had never given. Then he said the initials were a coincidence. The explanation changed 3 times before the manager finished printing the transfer receipt. I did not accuse him of anything. I did not need to. The truth was standing between us in a paper bag. I returned the engagement ring. The jeweler issued a store credit in Caleb's name, not mine, because he had been the purchaser. I signed the transfer and left with nothing except my half of the joint account records. 2 weeks later, Caleb asked me to meet him. He said the other ring had been a sentimental mistake and that he had never cheated. I asked why he had requested a second ring for his ex while planning our wedding. He said he had been confused. I said, "You were confused when you ordered it. You were confused when you hid it. You were only certain when you asked me to stop asking questions." He told me I was punishing him over a piece of jewelry. I said, "The jewelry was never the issue. The receipt was." The final settlement of our joint account showed that Caleb had spent more than I knew on the engagement ring, the hidden ring, and several hotel stays. I did not pursue every expense. I simply closed the account, separated my finances, and moved on. Months later, the jeweler mailed me a thank you card for returning the ring with proper documentation. It was a small gesture, but I kept it. The ring had represented a future Caleb promised me. The receipt represented the future he had been hiding. I was sad to lose one. I was grateful to find the other.